Hello, my name is Michael Povich, and we're here today to do another segment of Oral Histories of Hancock County, a project which involves interviewing people who live in Hancock County, work in Hancock County, who have achieved the magic age of at least 90 years of age. And today's interview is through the courtesy of the Ellsworth American. And today we're honored to have as our guest Edward Dewitt, also known as Ed Dewitt.
That's better.
Now, Ed, you were born when?
March the 10th, 1931.
So you just made the cut today. You just hit 90 in March, right?
That's right. But
All
I'll
right.
soon be another match, and I'll be 91, I hope.
Well, we hope so. So where were you born?
Here in Ellsworth. And way back then, it was called the Hurley Hospital.
I mean, where I was born, too, in 43.
Oh.
And who were your parents?
Alice and Elma Dewitt. My mother, Alice, was born in Ellsworth Falls on the last house up on Lakes Lane. The street was named after her family. My dad, Elmer, was born in North Ellsworth, next door to where we lived for many, many years. And Dad spent 45 years with the Maine Central Railroad as a section foreman, and I was always determined that I was going to catch up with his 45 years on a job. Didn't work out that way.
Well, we're going to get to that, but I think you could repeat that sentence and just add an S after job. Because
Well, yeah, but he had one job.
I know, but today, how many jobs do people have? They have lateral transfers. But anyway, so you grew up in North Ellsworth. For those who aren't familiar with North Ellsworth, where is North Ellsworth?
On your way to Bangor, about between 7 and 8 miles out from town here, you get to what's called McGowan's Hill, and where was the first 20 years of my life I spent right on top of McGowan's Hill on the right.
And that's past the road to Green Lake.
Not as far as Green, no.
No, past the road.
Oh, yes.
Past the Nicklin Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where you and your mom lived. Do you have any siblings, any brothers or sisters?
I had one brother, Bob, but that was all. The only immediate sibling.
And he died.
He passed away at 80 here quite a few years ago. And my mother passed away at 80 and my dad at 70. And every morning I wake up and wonder.
What's going to happen to you?
Yeah.
Well, so far you're did it. So anyway, did you ever go with him? When he was working on the railroad?
No, because he always had a crew with him all the time. And I've always said this new railroad that goes from Washington Junction up to Ellsworth Falls, if they ever go as far as Green Lake, I want to go someday.
Yeah, they'll get there. They'll
And
get there.
I really would look forward to going up there, see where Dad spent all of his life.
Yeah. So listen. There are a lot of DeWitts in Ellsworth, but I think you told me you're not related.
To the best of my knowledge, not related to anybody except Jimmy, who used to be. He was a distant relative, but there's still quite a few DeWitts around, but I'm not sure, well, where they came from or anything, because we're not related, no.
So as you were growing up in McGowan Hill, you were out in the country. way up in the country. And so you're growing up in, 30s. You remember when you're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And do you have all the amenities in those days? We've interviewed some people who grew up in that area that didn't have water, didn't have plumbing, didn't have electricity.
We was very fortunate. As far back as I can remember, we had a good well and electricity and things of that nature. Yeah.
And so growing up, when did you start school?
No, we're going back a ways. 1936, I started grammar school at Ellsworth Falls. Went there 8 years, of course. There was no sub-primary that far back.
That's what Joyce Johnston told us.
And I had, I remember 3 teachers today that I had up there, Mrs. Day, Pauline Day, Doris Heath, and Sybil Jordan. Sybil Gordon.
Yeah,
I'm
Sybil
sorry.
Gordon, she was around for a while. So, how many students were in the Ellsworth Falls School?
Oh, goodness. I would say the whole 8 grades, there wasn't over 50 or so. I don't really know exactly now.
And did they come from, they came from the Ellsworth Falls area?
Yeah, Ellsworth Falls and North Ellsworth and that way. They didn't come from downtown here because there was another grammar school.
What about coming up close to Otis and Marivo?
Well,
other than actually going to those towns?
Yeah, for the most part, there was always some, yes, but they had small schools in those towns.
So you went to school. How did you get to school?
Oh, we had a school bus. Mr. Maddox, I never will forget him. He drove for all the years I was in grammar school, and that all changed in '44 when they come down here to the city to go to high school.
The city. So, what did you do? I mean, you went to school. Did you have some friends in the neighborhood? Did you play? What kind of activities did you do growing up?
I had 2 really good friends way back then, but neither one of them lived very close. Steve Maddox lived up farther, and his father worked for my father, so we got to be real good friends.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Henry Bastow, who lived over in the next house, on the other side of the cemetery out there. And we were always very good friends, Steve and Henry and I.
What kind of activities did you do growing up in that?
Not a heck of a lot. I mean, ride a bike, meet around a lot of places, but there wasn't enough people to get involved in any sport or anything of that nature.
You had to be careful riding a bike up a McDonald's Hill.
Well,
there was a road there, and it was paved. The back road.
Yeah, it was a paved road, and everybody wasn't in such a hurry as they are today.
So you graduated in 1944. You went to Ellsworth High School.
Graduated there in '43 and started in '44 in high school.
And the school was?
The high school?
Yeah.
It's what presently is today connected with the senior center up the,
Brian E. Moore.
Brian E. Moore School. That was the high school back then.
And you graduated in '48. And what did you like? What was your curriculum?
Oh, I was all for mathematics and commercial type stuff. There was one other young man in the senior class, Merle Clausen, who was a great bookkeeper, and we was always in competition with one another. But when Austin's Furniture down on Main Street in Ellsworth needed a bookkeeper in the senior year, the school sent me down there. And I went and had a nice talk with them, and they said, "Well, we're very sorry, young man, but we just hired a lady a few weeks ago, and but we'd appreciate it if you'd come to work for us and do whatever's needed, deliver furniture or sell furniture, this, that, and the other, because this lady's she's not gonna make it. She's not gonna stay with us." 5 years later, I went in the Army, and she was still there.
So, did you ever have any interest in going to college, Ed?
In high school, I had serious thoughts about being a CPA, but as it worked out, working down there and everything, I gave up because my mother said, "Ed, sorry to say this, but we can't afford to send you to college." And it all worked out for the best.
What gave you this interest in numbers and math?
Well, I don't really know, but I've always been interested in, even today I do other people's income tax and things like that because I like to get involved in figures. And this job that I've been on 33 years,
Yeah.
I'm their finance director, and I'm working with finances all the time. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to get up in the morning and go to work and
Yeah.
say, "Gee,
So,
another day."
high school, what did you do in high school? You said you didn't have much time to do things in high school?
No, well, I was involved in student council and everything like that, all these little groups, and did intramural basketball 1, 2, 3, and 4 years. Football, I only lasted 1 year. And my real favorite in sports was baseball, but it lives, where it was soon after I got into high school, second year, I got a driver's license, and then it was a different story. I wasn't dependent on a bus or this and that and the other.
Well, let me ask you a question. I happened to do a little research on you.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
A little oppositional research here. And on page 19 of the Jester,
Yeah.
there's Edward L. Dewitt, and I have some questions to ask you.
Oh, thank you.
The most important question, well, first we have to,
I was going to say, I got that whole Jester out in the cab, but I didn't bring it with me. No.
well, my first question is, you have Edward L. Dewitt, then right to the right of it is Leroy.
Well, we don't talk about that.
Well,
My middle name, I had nothing to do with it.
so is Leroy your middle name?
Do I have to admit it?
We're not under oath.
Yes, it's my middle name, but I've never appreciated it.
Well, I asked Joyce the same question, and she said thought it was a made-up nickname. So anyway, somebody found out you were Leroy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Then there's a little poem. It says, Eddie is a leader in our class. He is this year's president and our last. Now that sounds kind of read two different ways, don't you think?
It jives, though, really.
So you were treasurer, student council, Jester board. Joyce already told us what Jester Fiesta was. Manager cross country, intramural football, track, intramural basketball, class president. Congratulations.
No, thank you.
Was it a contested election?
No.
All right, so, it looked like you, and I guess one of your teachers was Jack Johnston, right?
Jack Johnson, who ended up marrying Joyce.
Joyce, that's right. There's a lot of people in this class whose names are familiar to me, like Merle Clausen, Esther Linskat. We'll talk about Esther Linskat in a second, or we'll talk about the Linskat name in just a second. So after you graduated in 48, you didn't go to college. So what did you do after high school?
Well,
You went and worked for Austin.
I went to work for Austin from 48 to 53, and then
So in 53, you've been there 5 years. The person who you were going to replace was still in place.
she was still there.
And did not have any interest in moving on.
No.
And you said, I don't have much of a career being assistant something at Austin. So what did you do in 1953?
I had been in the National Guard for several years,
Yeah.
so I joined the Army because of the Korean conflict. And being in the National Guard for years, I was able to take my sergeant rank with me. And I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey. And wasn't too long after that, I came out on orders to go to Greenland. And commander,
Well, you're just on the other side of Machias, right?
yeah, not that one. And the commanding officer says, "Nothing doing, young man. You're our battalion supply sergeant here, and we need you right here. You're not going anywhere." So I spent 2 years right there at Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Came home one weekend and got married.
Well, good. Well, married. So when you came back in 55, right?
Yeah.
Did you go back to Austin? You didn't go back to Austin.
No, I went back and found out the lady was still there, so I wasn't interested in going back. I went on the police force, and I only served full time for a year, and then after that, I was put in charge of the police reserves.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I want to get back to that. Now, today's Ellsworth Police Force has what, 16, 17
Yeah.
patrol officers and a lot of squad cars and a lot of. Back in 1955, how many were there of you guarding Ellsworth?
Chief and 3 police officers and 1 vehicle. Is all there was.
So the chief was.
Bill Maddock.
And Bill Maddock had a business that he used for his police office at times. And where was his business located?
On Main Street, Emma Head Clothing Store.
Which is like on the corner of.
Right on the corner where 88 this is
where
now.
the burrito place is.
Yeah.
So that was not. Where, did you have? Was the police headquarters in City Hall too?
No, we had an office in City Hall.
Okay.
But nothing like they have today.
And who were who were the other guys? You had the police chief. There was you.
There was Harold White.
Now let's talk about Harold White. Now he had been the father of Harold Tug White.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so Tug's dad was on the police force then.
yeah.
And
Let's see. Well, there was a fellow from down at Cherryfield that I can't remember his name.
yeah,
And the third one was, I keep thinking of the reserves. After that first year, I was put in charge of the police reserves. We had 25 reserve officers,
all well trained.
all well trained, and we all took turns working when needed.
And how many people usually have patrolling Ellsworth on a typical day?
Just one on
Just one.
a typical day.
And you had that one vehicle.
I had one vehicle, yeah.
All right, so that's. And what was the kind of crimes you were enforcing in those days?
Nothing very serious. It was mostly drunken driving and things of that nature.
But yet, at some point, you left the reserves and you left police work.
Yeah, because let's see, from 56 to 60, while I was in charge of the reserves, I was also manager of American Oil Company bulk plant up here at the corner of State and Oak Street. But now it's, oh, you know what it is now. I can't think what
There was Fork and Road Restaurant was there once.
Yeah, but this, to the right, there was a big oil plant there,
I don't remember that.
fuel oil plant. Well, you're just a schoolboy, after all.
Thanks, Dad. So moving right along, as we say. Ask your next question. Yes, Your Honor, I will. But 1959, you went to work for the government.
Well, while I was on police duty one day, I ran across the postmaster. Eddie Moore, back then. And he said, why? He said, you were in the Army. And I said, yes, during the Korean conflict.
By the way, you spent your time in the United States. Okay, go ahead.
And he says, why don't you go to Bangor and take the exam for the post office? He says, great future there for you. And I thought it over and said, boy, that sounds like a good deal. Went there and just had to wait for the first vacancy and was hired. Started out by carrying a mailbag on the street and then working on the counter and worked my way up. First thing you know, I was assistant postmaster, and I had that job for like 14 years.
Was that under Roland Gattay?
Yeah, and then it turned, of course, back then, postmaster jobs were all political appointments.
Yeah.
And luckily, when the vacancy came up that I was eligible for, I was the first non-political appointment postmaster in Ellsworth.
And he was a postmaster until 1988.
Yeah, from 80 through 88.
So how long were you with the Postal Department?
30, altogether 31 and a half years.
And where was the post office when you started?
Down where the Emmaus Center is now.
And were you the postmaster when you moved to his present location?
No, we moved, well, it happened almost the same time. We moved to the present location on Memorial Day weekend, 1980.
Just about when you...
Just about the time we got up there.
But you left in 88.
But during my term as postmaster, I went to 3 different post offices because they was having a lot of problems with their so-called postmaster and this, that, and the other. I spent practically a year up in Brewer, another term in Old Town, and then the toughest one was in Bar Harbor because the fellow that was there had his fingers in the till and shouldn't have been there.
So you were sort of a troubleshooter, too.
Yeah. And then I ended up touring the whole state of Maine, training new postmasters for a long period of time. In 1982, for some unknown reason, I was picked as Postmaster of the Year for the state of Maine.
Congratulations. So now we got to talk about Pat Linscott.
Well, she wasn't Pat Linscott too long. She was Pat Dewitt.
When did you meet Pat?
She graduated in 1952, but I met her because of a sister that was in our class, Esther.
Yeah.
I met her, and we went together we started going together about 1950. And as I say, I came home from Fort Dix on a weekend, and we got married, and she went back with me. And we were married 60 years.
And I know she passed.
She passed November 10th, 2013.
Yeah. And you never had children.
No, God bless her, she wasn't able to, and always had a house full of nieces and nephews. And
Well, I can see there's a Beverly and a Dick and a Dorothy and an Esther. There's quite a family.
yeah, and the youngest one, a boy, Les, he was short-lived.
Really.
Yeah, he didn't.
So Pat did not work outside the home.
No, she worked for a while in Stratton's 5 and 10 on the lunch counter.
Yeah.
But for the most part, she didn't work.
Okay. And so let's see. You in 1962, you bought the house at 9 Fairground Road where you still live.
Yeah, we had a house up at Ellsworth Falls.
Yeah.
But that's when I was working a lot of nights for the police department in '60, and I didn't like Pat didn't drive, and I didn't like her being alone up there. So we sold the house and bought this one where we are presently.
So moving, and you've lived there ever since. Okay, briefly, you're 90 years old.
Thanks. Rub it in.
No, I'm not rubbing in. I think it's pretty amazing because you're still working full time by choice.
Oh, absolutely.
By choice, and you are now working for Down East Transportation, and you started out as the executive director.
Now, I started out as way back in let's see, January 2nd, 1989, right after I just got through with
Post
office. And the company was relatively new then, and they was looking for an operations manager.
Operations.
And I went there, and I still know the fellow real well that hired me, and he says, "Ed, do you really want to work for me?" And I said, "Yep." So started out as operations manager. Then I moved up to the general manager for 10 years. Then we had a little problem. We had a fellow that needed to find a job for pretty bad. So I said, well, I'd a lot rather be in finance. And I stepped down and took the finance director's job.
And that's what you are now.
And I'm still there.
And we're going to be winding down a little bit, so I just want to ask you a few bullet points. When you started out, was the business in Trenton?
The bus company?
Yeah.
No, right here in town. Buses, we only had like 5 buses.
That's what I'm talking. You had 5 buses, and how many people working back then when you started?
Oh my goodness, it was general manager, myself, a couple of drivers, not over a half dozen at the most.
Now today?
In the summertime,
Yeah.
Today, we try to have 125 drivers.
Yeah.
And from 1st of June until Columbus Day in mid-October, every one of them are getting overtime when they want it because we're so busy.
And how many buses?
We got only around 60.
Only around 60. And some of them are, you see them driving around. I mean, you recognize. So you do the service for the Acadia National Park.
Yeah, we do. We're involved all through the park from mid-June through Columbus Day.
And those are propane.
Those are all propane. The park won't let us in there with anything but propane.
Now, what about you do a lot of for Jackson Lab?
Jackson Lab now is our biggest customer. Between the Ellsworth and the Bar Harbor labs, those buses are all diesel. They don't care what you use, but they need a bigger bus. And the diesels, they'll haul 45 people. But during this COVID thing,
Yeah.
a 45 passenger bus was only allowed to have 10 people on it.
Is that eased up now?
That's eased right up and now.
Now, but you drive, but just give us a snapshot. How far does your buses go to get? I mean, where?
Well, the Jackson Lab buses, one goes to Bangor, one goes to Brewer, because either one can't haul them all.
Yeah.
One goes to Cherryfield. Well, basically that's changed now. It just goes as far as Millbridge.
Yeah.
Another one goes to Franklin, and there's about 3 here in Ellsworth that Jackson Lab only.
But then you have regular bus service for people who, elderly people. Who
Oh,
need,
yeah.
And where's some place you
Well,
go for that?
one day a week there's one that goes round and round Ellsworth. One day Tuesdays they go round and round Bar Harbor. Wednesday Bucksport. Friday's one of the first trips we ever had way back in 1988 or so was to Stonington, and that bus is still running to Stonington every Friday.
And you keep the books balanced.
Yeah, some days I spend more time trying to raise money enough to keep the bills paid.
Isn't that the fun part? And your hours. So you what time do you go to work?
In the summertime, I was there at 4 a.m. every day.
And what time you get up then, or do you?
Up at 3 and going by quarter of and zoom right down there.
So what time you go to bed?
Well, I'm not one to stay up too very late, no.
You stay up very late, it's time to get up. That's what you're basically saying.
Well, no, about 8 o'clock, I'm shutting off the...
Yeah.
Basically on TV, I'm concerned about the news and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And doing jigsaw puzzles, things like that. But, okay, so I know you have things to do besides that, but since we're winding down, because they told me we are, you got this cat that I met when I started to talk about what we're going to say today, and that cat's name is
Babe.
Babe, and
It was Baby when we adopted her, but
it's how old now?
she's 12 now.
All right, now we're going to talk about some midnight when you were asleep. And what year was that?
Oh boy, let's see,
About-
Pat died in 13. This would have been in 2015.
Okay, so you were sleeping.
Sound asleep at midnight. That little critter, she knew that there was something seriously wrong. I had heard of dogs being able to notify, but I never heard of a cat before. And she onto my chest and no claws, but just going like this to wake me up. Woke up and sat on the edge of the bed, and I said, yeah, there's certainly something wrong here. Went in the bathroom, got dressed, and drove over to the hospital. Thank God I lived close to the hospital here in town. 10 minutes later, I was in an ambulance to Bangor. And I was a lucky man because they had a surgeon there that time of night. He operated on everything. I was having a massive heart attack. And today I still have a defibrillator, pacemaker, mess of stents. But came home 9 days later and I said, little girl, this house is yours. She looks up at me. You can stay here as long as you keep all the bills paid and feed me good. And boy, she's been fed good. This fella knows.
He's
He come up to
incredible.
the house one.
I'm a cat owner too, but I mean, she's like my cat. I've got a theory that the only place Babe hasn't been is the ceiling. But
Well,
if it wasn't for Babe,
I wouldn't be here.
you wouldn't be here, and if you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't have shared this incredible life and story you've told us, and the fact that
No.
it doesn't sound like you're going to retire, and it doesn't look like you're going to go to all those places in town that say they're now hiring. And I don't think you're going to become a greeter at Walmart
No.
or anything like that. But Eddie, I've known you for years. I've been fond of you for years, like all the people I speak to. And really, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to be around.
Oh, you think? That's why we do this. Because 90 years old and there's people, all the energy you still have. I'm not saying you're going to climb Mount
Well,
Katahdin.
That night I was in Bangor there being operated on. Esther, Esther Clausen,
Yeah.
who was my wife's sister, and was in the class in high school. She and her daughter, a neighbor of mine, called them and told them that I had gone to Bangor by ambulance, and they come zooming over there. And the surgeon talked with Esther after he was done. He says that man never would have woke up again if it hadn't been for that kitty. So that's why she's well fed.
Now, as I recall, Esther's husband, Lou Ray
Yeah.
Clausen, was an employee of yours for years.
Yeah,
Of course,
he
and he
wa-
had the same kind of heart condition. And
Yeah.
I remember a story where he actually dropped at the post office lobby, and
Yeah, he dropped right there. Yeah, we've been some very, very lucky people.
well, and you feel good now, and you take care of yourself.
Gosh, I'm thankful at 4 a.m. every morning when I'm up and raring to go.